In 2025, over 700,000 people have officially left the UK. That's more than the entire population of Leeds gone. And they're not just tourists, they're doctors, engineers, students, and families. Why? Because the UK, once known for its global charm, royal prestige, and modern cities, is slowly becoming a place people are choosing to leave behind. Let's be honest, something doesn't feel the same anymore. The magic is fading. You can feel it on the streets, in the news, in everyday conversations. Remember when Britain was the land of opportunity, innovation, and cultural pride? Now it's facing power outages, overcrowded hospitals, and record-high prices. Even the pubs, once the heart of British life, are closing down at alarming rates. It's as if the spirit of the nation is quietly slipping away. So what exactly is going wrong? Why are people calling it the fall of the British era? Why are international investors pulling out? Why are British citizens searching how to move abroad at record levels? And more importantly, why is nobody talking about it openly? This isn't just some social media rant. These are hard truths, backed by real numbers, real stories, and real consequences. Stay with me, because we're diving into the 10 shocking reasons why the UK is losing its charm in 2025, and some of them will truly surprise you. Number 1. Cost of living crisis. If there's one thing every person in the UK is feeling in 2025, it's the cost of simply staying alive. The cost of living crisis isn't just a buzzword, it's a daily struggle, etched into every grocery run, every energy bill, and every rent payment. Let's break it down. Inflation has surged to nearly 8%, one of the highest rates in Western Europe. A basic basket of food, milk, bread, eggs, cheese, fresh fruit, now costs nearly twice as much as it did just a couple years ago. Even simple items like butter and tomatoes are suddenly luxuries. It's no surprise that over 3 million people now rely on food banks, including many with full-time jobs. Energy bills, unbelievable. Despite government price caps, average annual energy costs have skyrocketed to over £2,000 per household, forcing people to turn off heating during freezing winters. Many homes now operate on heat hours, rationing warmth like it's a precious resource. For pensioners and low-income families, this isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. And rent? It's pure chaos. In cities like London, Manchester, and Bristol, rent has exploded. A one-bedroom flat now averages £2,100 per month in the capital. Even shared flats are becoming unaffordable. Young adults are stuck with parents, and graduates are abandoning cities altogether, chasing affordability abroad. Meanwhile, wages have barely budged. The average salary increase is just 2 to 3%, meaning real income is shrinking. People are working more and affording less. The result? A national mood that feels exhausted and cornered. This crisis is hollowing out not just bank accounts, but the future itself. When survival becomes the only goal, dreams get postponed, families break under stress, and a once proud nation starts losing its identity. And this is just the beginning. Number 2. NHS in crisis. The National Health Service, once the pride of Britain, is now the symbol of a system buckling under pressure. In 2025, the NHS is no longer just struggling, it's in crisis. Waiting times for routine surgeries have crossed 18 months. Emergency departments are overflowing. People are spending entire nights in hospital corridors just to be seen. In some areas, calling an ambulance feels more like a hope than a guarantee. Response times now stretch into hours, not minutes. But how did we get here? Understaffing is the heart of the problem. There's a shortage of over 100,000 NHS staff, including critical roles like GPs, nurses, and paramedics. Many have quit due to burnout and poor pay, leaving behind a skeletal workforce trying to hold everything together with duct tape. The result? Patients waiting so long they become critically ill. Cancer screenings missed, surgeries delayed to the point where lives are at risk. And while billions are being poured into reforms, it often feels like putting a plaster on a severed artery. Morale is at rock bottom. Healthcare workers, once celebrated during the pandemic, now feel forgotten. Strikes have become common and public trust is eroding fast. More and more Brits are turning to private healthcare, not because they want to, but because they feel like they have no choice. And here's the scariest part. This collapse isn't just harming the sick, it's making people lose faith in the very fabric of British society. Because if the NHS can fail, what else is next? What do you think is the real reason behind the NHS collapse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And if you want more deep dives into what's really happening in the UK, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Number 3. Brexit Backlash. Remember when Brexit was supposed to be about taking back control? Well, in 2025, it feels more like giving it away. Slowly, painfully, and one lost opportunity at a time. 5 years after officially leaving the EU, the promised sunlit uplands look more like a foggy mess. Trade deals, complicated. Travel freedom, gone. EU workers, left. Businesses, relocating. Across the UK, manufacturers are choking on red tape. Small exporters, especially in agriculture and retail, have lost key markets in Europe. One cheese producer said, "It's easier to ship to Japan than to France now." That wasn't the plan. And the workforce, it's shrinking. EU nationals, once the backbone of hospitality, healthcare and farming, have left in droves, and they're not coming back. The result? Fruit rotting in fields, understaffed care homes, restaurants closing early, not because there's no demand, but because there's no one to serve it. What about travel? That spontaneous weekend trip to Paris. Now it involves queues, passport stamps, and sometimes surprise visa paperwork. Brits are no longer EU citizens, they're tourists with limits. And the political impact? It's divided the country like never before. Half still believe it was the right call. The other half are watching the consequences unfold and asking, was it really worth it? But here's the quiet part no one admits. Even some of Brexit's loudest cheerleaders are now softening their tone. Because it turns out, sovereignty doesn't fill supermarket shelves or staff your GP clinics. The backlash isn't loud anymore. It's subtle, systemic, and felt in everyday inconveniences. And that's the scary part. The damage isn't a dramatic explosion. It's slow erosion. And by the time you notice what's gone, it's too late to bring it back. Number 4. Political instability. It's hard to keep track of who's actually in charge these days. By 2025, the UK has cycled through 5 prime ministers in less than 10 years. That's not a democracy running smoothly. That's a revolving door of crisis management. Each new leader promises a fresh start, but before policies can settle or visions can take root, there's another resignation, another scandal, another leadership race. What used to be rare is now routine. People aren't surprised anymore, they're numb. And that's a problem. Because political instability doesn't just hurt Parliament, it breaks public trust. Poll after poll shows record-low confidence in both major parties. The phrase, "they're all the same," has become less of a complaint and more of a survival instinct. Voters feel abandoned, cynical, and increasingly disengaged from the very system that's supposed to represent them. It shows in the policies too. Short-term fixes, constant U-turns, and headline-chasing decisions have replaced long-term planning. One month, there's a tax break. The next, it's reversed. Climate pledges are made and broken. Immigration rules flip overnight. It's like watching someone steer a ship while spinning in circles. Meanwhile, behind the political theatre, the real issues, housing, healthcare, education, go unresolved. Because when governments are busy fighting themselves, there's no energy left to actually govern. And people are tired. Tired of scandals, tired of empty speeches, tired of leaders who last less time in office than a mobile phone contract. When a country stops believing that its leaders can lead, the entire system begins to rot from the inside out. And in the UK, that decay is no longer hidden. It's on full display. Number 5. Decline in education quality. There was a time when British schools were admired across the world, seen as rigorous, well-funded and respected. In 2025, that image feels like a distant memory. Ask any parent, student or teacher, and you'll hear the same thing. The system is stretched thin, too thin. Teacher shortages are at crisis levels. Thousands of classrooms are being led by underqualified staff or supply teachers, filling in long-term. Not because the teachers don't care, but because they're burning out. Fast. Workloads are crushing, salaries haven't kept up with inflation, and morale almost non-existent. One teacher recently said, "I love teaching. I just can't afford to do it anymore." The result? Bigger class sizes, less one-on-one time, and growing gaps in learning. Students are falling behind, not due to lack of effort, but lack of support. Schools are forced to choose. Do we hire a teaching assistant or fix the leaking roof? Funding is another ticking time bomb. Real-term spending per pupil has dropped over the last decade, leaving schools to rely on fundraisers, parent donations, even crowdfunding to buy basic supplies like books and pencils. And here's the ripple effect. The UK is now slipping in international education rankings, outpaced by countries investing more consistently in their youth. The long-term consequences are serious. Fewer skilled workers, lower economic output, and a generation that feels let down before it's even started. Education is supposed to be the great equalizer. But right now, it's reinforcing inequality instead. And for many families across the UK, that's not just disappointing, it's heartbreaking. If the next generation can't rely on the system to give them a fair shot, what does that say about the future? Number 6. Rise in crime and antisocial behaviour. Walk through any major UK city in 2025 and something feels off. It's not just the boarded-up shops or empty high streets, it's the tension, the quiet feeling that public spaces aren't as safe as they used to be. Because they aren't. Knife crime is up nearly 20% in the past year alone. Reports of antisocial behaviour, vandalism, street harassment, public drug use are pouring in from communities that used to feel safe. These aren't isolated incidents, they're part of a wider breakdown in public order that's hitting both cities and suburbs alike. What's driving it? One word: cuts. Over the past decade, police funding has been repeatedly slashed. There are now fewer than 160 officers per 100,000 people, one of the lowest ratios in Western Europe. That means slower response times, fewer patrols, and stretched thin forces struggling to keep up. Community policing almost vanished. Instead of knowing the local bobby on the beat, people now report crimes online and hope someone shows up. But often they don't. For young people, it's worse. A lack of youth services, mentorship programs, and safe recreational spaces has left a vacuum that gangs and crime have eagerly filled. Some teenagers say carrying a weapon is less about aggression and more about survival. The result is a feedback loop. More crime leads to more fear. More fear leads to more isolation, and the sense of shared public space, the heart of any healthy society, starts to disintegrate. This isn't just a policing problem, it's a reflection of social neglect. When investment in communities dries up, the cracks widen, and right now those cracks are turning into canyons. Because when people don't feel safe where they live, they start dreaming about living somewhere else. Number 7. Urban decay and infrastructure failures. There was a time when the UK's cities were admired for their charm: historic, modern, efficient. But in 2025, it's hard not to notice how much is crumbling, both literally and metaphorically. Take a walk through Birmingham or Sheffield, and the story tells itself: potholes so deep they could snap an axle, train stations that smell like mold and diesel, and rows of shops left empty with "to let" signs gathering dust. Even in London, the city meant to be the jewel of Britain, the cracks are visible, on the roads, in the tube, and in the faces of commuters stuck on delayed trains. Public transport, an exercise in frustration. Britain's once reliable railways are now plagued with cancellations, strikes, and outdated infrastructure. The North still waits for promised upgrades that never seem to arrive, while ticket prices climb higher than flights to Europe. And then there's housing. Public housing is collapsing, sometimes literally. Councils don't have the budget to repair decades-old buildings, leaving families in unsafe, mold-infested flats with broken boilers and no hot water. The housing crisis isn't just about cost, it's about dignity. Meanwhile, new developments pop up, but only in wealthy boroughs. Glass skyscrapers and luxury flats no one can afford, built next to food banks and boarded-up pubs. The contrast is staggering. The decay isn't everywhere, but it's spreading. Slowly, steadily, and with a kind of quiet neglect that's even more dangerous than disaster. Because when infrastructure fails, so does trust. People stop believing their taxes will be used for good. They stop believing their environment can get better, and that's when cities stop feeling like homes and start feeling like holding cells. Number 8. Loss of global soft power. For decades, the UK didn't just influence the world through military or economic might, it did so with something far more subtle. Soft power. British culture, education, music, fashion, and media shaped global trends. But in 2025, that glow is fading. The UK's universities, once magnets for international talent, are seeing declining enrolments from abroad. Tuition hikes, visa complications, and reduced funding have made top institutions like Oxford and Cambridge less accessible and less attractive. Many students now choose Canada, Australia, or Germany instead. British media? It's no longer the cultural juggernaut it once was. Where once the BBC was seen as a global standard, now it faces budget cuts, accusations of bias, and shrinking international influence. Even British film and television, which once set global trends, from Downton Abbey to Sherlock, is getting overshadowed by streaming content from the US, South Korea, and beyond. Music and fashion, once exported effortlessly from the UK, now feel more local than global. British pop icons aren't commanding the charts like they used to. British designers, once mainstays at global fashion weeks, are now being outshined by emerging names from Asia and Africa. And diplomatically, the UK's voice on the world stage has become quieter. Brexit changed the dynamics. Once a bridge between the US and EU, Britain now often finds itself on the sidelines, rather than at the centre of major global decisions. Soft power is like reputation. It takes years to build and moments to lose. And right now, the UK is watching its influence evaporate, not in explosions, but in silence. Because when a country stops inspiring the world eventually stops listening. Number 9. Brain drain and youth emigration. Ask a group of young Brits what their 5-year plan is, and more than ever, you'll hear one word: leave. It's not just wanderlust, it's survival. In 2025, the UK is facing a serious brain drain, a steady outflow of educated, ambitious, and talented young people who are building their futures abroad. Countries like Canada, Australia, the Netherlands, and Germany are seeing record numbers of UK applicants. Why? Because they offer what many feel the UK no longer can: affordable living, stable jobs, and a sense of optimism. The numbers don't lie. Net migration of skilled UK workers is up significantly, particularly among those aged 25 to 35. These aren't people fleeing hardship. They're leaving because they've lost faith in the system at home. Wages are stagnant, housing is unaffordable, and career progression feels locked behind closed doors. Even the dream of buying a home, once a basic life goal, is now seen as impossible by many under 40. So they're looking elsewhere. But this isn't just a personal issue, it's a national one. When bright minds leave, innovation slows, startups disappear, public services lose energy and new ideas, communities miss out on leaders who might have made a difference. And the saddest part, many of them don't want to leave. They feel they have to. They leave behind family, friends, and their roots, not because they're chasing adventure, but because they're chasing stability, safety, a future. What does it say about a country when its best and brightest feel they're better off elsewhere? It says that something's broken, and the longer it's ignored, the harder it will be to bring them back. Number 10. Climate and environmental struggles. When you think of climate change, the UK might not be the first place that comes to mind. But in 2025, its environmental struggles are impossible to ignore. Flooding has become a seasonal expectation. From Somerset to Yorkshire, entire towns are repeatedly submerged. Homes are ruined, insurance premiums are skyrocketing, and still, flood defences lag behind. Residents don't ask if the next flood will hit, they ask when. Meanwhile, heat waves are hitting harder and more often. In a country built for damp cold, not dry heat, that's a big problem. Schools close, railways buckle, hospitals overflow with heat-related illnesses. And the worst part? The infrastructure isn't adapting fast enough. But it's not just extreme weather. Raw sewage is being dumped into rivers and seas at alarming rates. over 300,000 incidents last year alone. Swimmers report getting sick after a day at the beach. Anglers are pulling plastic and waste from rivers instead of fish. It's not just disgusting, it's dangerous. The government's response? Mixed at best. Green targets are set, then delayed. Environmental laws are passed, then watered down to avoid upsetting certain industries. And while politicians argue over net zero deadlines, the climate doesn't wait. This isn't a future problem. It's now. The UK's nature, its coastlines, countryside, rivers and air, has always been part of its charm, but that charm is fading under a wave of neglect, short-term thinking, and missed opportunities. People notice. They notice when they can't swim in local rivers, when summer feels more like the Sahara, when ancient trees are felled for fast roads, when their environment no longer feels livable. The planet may be global, but the impact is local. And right now, Britain's losing its grip on both. So what do you think? Has the UK really lost its charm, or is there still hope for a comeback? Drop your raw, honest take in the comments. We read every single one. If this video opened your eyes, go check out our last deep dive. It connects the dots even further. And hey, if you believe in content that actually takes time and effort to make, hit that subscribe button. Just one click can keep this going.